Back when the Mahabharata show was airing, I was still in school. And since it was based on this epic, I always thought that for the Mahabharata, there was an ancient copy written thousands of years ago, kept somewhere in some archive. I always believed that the Mahabharata we have today was an unaltered, unchanged version, just as it was written by Vyasa thousands of years ago. And boy, was I wrong. I guess I was a bit naive, but I wasn't the only one. Even some politicians make the same mistake. The truth is, there is no master copy of the Mahabharata. The version we know today was only compiled in the 20th century by a team of scholars. It's actually a copy of a copy of a copy of even older texts, written in multiple languages and scripts. So how did it all come to be?
A simplified timeline looks like this. Around the 10th century BCE, a book named Jaya was written, describing the Kurukshetra war, a straightforward retelling of the events that took place. About 5 centuries later, a gifted poet compiled and expanded upon the stories to form the Bharata-Samhita, which eventually became the Mahabharata. During this process, through oral traditions and various writers, the text changed, with things being added or altered. This led to the formation of multiple versions of the Mahabharata. If you travel around the Indian subcontinent, the Mahabharata changes almost every 100 miles. Each language, and even religion, has its own version of the epic. In the 20th century, the Bhandarkar Institute of Pune undertook the task of collecting these various versions of the Mahabharata. They found manuscripts like the Maithili manuscripts from Bihar, dating back to the 15th century, and Bengali manuscripts from the 18th century. There were also 230 manuscripts in Devanagari and many more. The scholars compiled all these sources to form a somewhat coherent edition of the Mahabharata. But during this process, it became clear that the Mahabharata was never just one coherent text. It was a living epic, continuously added to, with parts removed or even manipulated. In today's video, we'll look at some of the missing or lost aspects of the Mahabharata. Who wrote the Mahabharata? This seems like an easy question. Vyasa wrote the Mahabharata, right? He's even present in the early scenes of the Ramayana and remains involved until the very end of the Mahabharata. He's not just a passive witness either. He's actively involved, procreating and granting special powers to people. But is he really the original author of the Mahabharata? There's another candidate who could claim authorship. Krishna Dvaipayana. Krishna Dvaipayana could literally be translated as the dark guy from two islands. But is this a title or the real name of the person who wrote the Mahabharata? We don't really know. Even Vyasa could be a title rather than a name, as it translates to the guy who is great with words, which is a fitting title for someone who composed the Mahabharata. But that's not all. Mahabharata is actually narrated by Ugrashrava Sauti to a sage. Inside this narration, Vaisampayana tells the story of the Kurukshetra war, which is supposed to be a story narrated by Vyasa. Essentially, the Mahabharata is a story within a story within a story. This shows how the tale kept growing and evolving over time. The missing chapters. In the current form of the Mahabharata, there are 18 core chapters, plus the Harivamsa, the life of Krishna, if you choose to include it as part of the Mahabharata. But has it always been this way? Well, there's a way to find out. Although we don't have many old copies of the Mahabharata, since everything in ancient India was written either on palm leaves or birch bark, which hardly survived due to India's climate, there were travelers connected through the Silk Route. Some manuscripts left India, traveled to drier climates, and have survived to this day, giving us a glimpse into the lost past. One such manuscript is the Spitzer manuscript, a Buddhist manuscript found in modern-day China. Carbon dating indicates that it dates back to around 130 AD. Although the manuscript itself isn't about the Mahabharata, it contains copies of older Buddhist and Hindu treatises. One part of the manuscript lists the chapters of the Mahabharata sequentially. But here's the problem. The list is missing Virata Parva, section 4, where the Pandavas went incognito at the court of Virata. and Anushasana Parva, section 13, which describes the last days of Bhishma. The absence of these chapters from such an old list suggests that they might have been added sometime after the 2nd century AD. This can be corroborated thematically as well. Chapter 13 contains some of the strangest lines. I'll put the original phrase on the screen here. Even a scholar who has read all the 4 Vedas is reborn as a donkey if he does not serve a Brahmin, and he remains a donkey for 15 more births. I don't need to explain much, but this suggests that chapter 13 may have been added later to support Brahminical caste supremacy, likely during the Gupta period when the caste system became more prominent. The missing Virata Parva tells a different story. In this section, we see a repeat of the Kurukshetra war. The Pandavas fight the Kauravas in a proper battle, with Arjuna single-handedly driving the Kauravas to flight, all within a day. Meanwhile, the same kind of battle in the Kurukshetra war takes place over 18 days, with multiple deaths. It seems like a hastily written fan fiction that didn't exist at the time of the Spitzer manuscript. The 100 Sons of Dhritarashtra. From a scientific standpoint, we can safely say that a woman cannot give birth to more than 10 babies, let alone 100. Yet, the story involves Vyasa making a cameo, splitting an embryo into 100 pieces, placing them into 100 pots, from which the 100 Kauravas emerge. All of the Kauravas are mentioned in chapter 117 of Adi Parva, but only 5 to 6 are mentioned prominently. Duryodhana is the main Kaurava, and Dushasana is known as a good fighter who took part in the battle. Vikarna and Chitrasena have minor roles, while Durmarshana and Durmukha are only mentioned in passing, as Kauravas, whose houses were later taken over by Nakula and Sahadeva. So, what about the possibility of the Kauravas having multiple mothers? That's a likely scenario. Duryodhana is also called Jyeshthanaya, meaning born of the eldest wife, which suggests that there were probably other wives of Dhritarashtra. Dhritarashtra also had another son with an attendant named Yuyutsu. This makes it more plausible that Dhritarashtra had multiple wives, who together bore many sons, perhaps not quite 100, but closer to that number. The story of the Kauravas being born from 100 pots is likely a later Puranic addition, adding a mystical element to their birth. Krishna being a cheater. I've covered this in a recent video which you can check out here. But to keep it brief, here's the gist of it. Krishna worshippers had their own sect, which was independent of the Vedic religion and differed significantly in theology. To tarnish Krishna's character, certain interpolations were added into the Mahabharata. A prime example of this is the mace battle between Duryodhana and Bhima. The base story of their fight has likely existed since the early versions of the Kurukshetra war, but over time, numerous inconsistencies were added. In verses 1 to 21, Arjuna asks Krishna who the superior mace fighter is. Krishna replies that while Bhima is the strongest, Duryodhana has more skill and practice, and unless Bhima breaks the rules, he will never fulfill his oath. This is a very odd dialogue, not just because it feels out of place, but because it contradicts the rest of the Mahabharata. In other parts of the epic, Bhima is repeatedly described as the strongest mace fighter. In Udyoga Parva, Bhishma himself declares Bhima the greatest mace fighter ever. During the Kurukshetra war, we see Bhima slaying elephants and destroying chariots with just his mace. In Salya Parva, 3 mace fighters are called the greatest ever: Salya, Balarama, and Bhima. There's no mention of Duryodhana here. Further adding to the oddity is Balarama's sudden appearance during the final mace battle, after being absent for the rest of the Kurukshetra war. He arrives only to judge that Bhima has broken the rules. In verses 42 to 47, we see Bhima rushing towards Duryodhana with his mace. He attacks, Duryodhana jumps to avoid the blow, but the mace hits his thigh, causing Duryodhana to fall. Even in the Mahabharata, Bhima doesn't explicitly break any rules. So why does this cheating narrative exist? As mentioned earlier, it was likely added to tarnish Krishna's character during the rise of the Bhagavata sect, which held Krishna in divine reverence. For more details, you can check out my previous video on this topic. the real father of Yudhishthira? This is a controversial one, and I'm probably going to get some heat for it. But hear me out. I didn't come up with these ideas. I'm compiling research from several scholars who have spent years studying the Mahabharata in all its intricate details. I'll provide all the references in the description below. So here's the theory. The three original siblings of the Kuru dynasty were Pandu, the father of the Pandavas, Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kauravas, and Vidura, born to a low-caste woman. Vidura had no right to the throne, as per the Mahabharata, due to his low-caste birth. According to the Mahabharata, Yama was reborn as Vidura, meaning Vidura was Yama himself. Keep this in mind, as it will come up later. Dhritarashtra, being the older sibling, wanted the throne, but on Vidura's suggestion, it was given to Pandu since Dhritarashtra was blind. Of course, this left Dhritarashtra feeling salty. Later, due to certain circumstances, Pandu had to give up his throne and retire to the forest, allowing Dhritarashtra to finally become king. Now, when it comes to the next generation, Pandu was incapable of fathering children, but Kunti had a boon that allowed her to invoke gods for help. She invoked Yama to conceive her first child, Yudhishthira. But wait, remember that we already have Yama in the story, in the form of Vidura. Could it be that Kunti actually invoked Vidura for the conception? Many scholars think so. The late Iravati Karve has speculated about this and provided further evidence. At the end of the Kurukshetra war, the older generation retires to the forest. Dhritarashtra with Gandhari and Kunti with Vidura. See the connection? And this wouldn't have been considered strange in ancient times. Vidura was Pandu's brother, so it was seen as rightful. This also allowed Yudhishthira to be born before Duryodhana, giving him the claim to the throne as the eldest of the cousins. There's also a scene during Vidura's last days that feels like a father-son moment between Vidura and Yudhishthira. So why was this redacted from the Mahabharata? The reason is technical. While Yudhishthira was the eldest, in those times, only Kshatriyas were allowed to be kings. If Yudhishthira were publicly known to be Vidura's son, his claim to the throne would have been compromised due to Vidura's low caste status. This fact was likely kept hidden during the Kurukshetra war and later edited out in subsequent versions of the Mahabharata. This video has already gone on for too long. Let me know if you want a part 2 in the comments, and I'll make it if there's enough interest. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.